Let's Talk Ministry with Pastor Dennis Martin, where we talk everything and all things ministry.
Well, hey everybody, it's Pastor Martin and it is Wednesday. And you know what that means? That means we are talking ministry today. And I'm sure that it's going to be a very interesting day. So please share this with somebody. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And let's be a part of the discussion today. Do we have two sets of rules in ministry? I believe it's going to be a great time. I believe it's going to be something that we want to really discuss. Oftentimes we talk about ministry, but we sometimes do not really touch subjects and matters and issues that we need to touch, because sometimes they're uncomfortable to address, they're uncomfortable to have the discussion, it's uncomfortable to talk about it. And I know that we don't always want to talk about these things because they can be very uncomfortable. But today, let's have a discussion. Let's talk about this and let's just share today. And so I want to give you just a few minutes to reach out to someone that you may know that's in ministry, someone that you've had this question, but you haven't asked anybody about it. Let's have the conversation today. Let's talk about it. Let's deal with it. Let's see what your thoughts are. I would love to hear and see your comments. I'm watching them. I would love to see your comments on this particular subject. Do we have two sets of rules in ministry? And it's going to be very interesting today. This is something that came about as I've been watching news reports and watching the news, as many of you have. And the question just sort of came to me, and there's always been a question, I guess, is do we have two sets of rules in ministry? So let's deal with it. Let's talk about it. Don't be afraid to jump into conversation. Don't be afraid to talk about it. For those of you that are viewing live now, for those of you that will watch, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, those of you that are watching here on Facebook, don't be afraid to jump into the conversation. Let's have the conversation. Well, let's get right into it. I'm not going to be long because I've got ministry engagement on tonight, but I'm definitely going to be, we're going to definitely be talking about it. Okay, let's do this. Do we have two sets of rules in ministry? Let's first lay the groundwork for this particular subject today, for this particular live today in Let's Talk Ministry. In the world, we can see where the same rules don't always apply to everybody. It seems like even though the rules are made, even though even laws are made, we can see where every time something is made, whether it's a rule, whether it's a law, it doesn't always apply to everybody, and it all depends on who is interpreting the law, who's looking at it, or who's going by it, where one person may be judged on one thing, the other person may not be judged at all. And so it all depends. It's like being in a basketball game. One referee calls a foul, and he says it's charging. The other referee says, no, it goes the other way. So it all depends on whose eyes it is being viewed from. But when we look at it, we can see that many times in the world alone, we're not even talking about ministry, just in the world, we can see where there are two sets of rules many times. First of all, in the court system, we can see where there are two sets of rules. Many of us have watched the thing concerning the scandal, or whatever you want to call it, for the school, where those that were rich were paying their children's way to be accepted into these premier colleges and all of those things. And so one report says that some of them pleaded guilty, and they're working on a deal where they may get 6 months in jail, or 6 months, which will probably end up being house arrest. But then you look on the other hand, and a woman that was of color got sentenced to 12 years because she didn't put the right address down, because she wanted her child to be in a certain district in school. Now the rules should apply to everybody, but of course the rules don't apply to everybody. So in court we can see where they don't apply. Some will get probation for the same crime or either a worse crime, and then the other may not do as much and they get just dragged through the mud. Why? Because we see that there could be two sets of rules. Even in the school system, we see where there can be two sets of rules. And when you look at the sitcom that comes on, Tyler Perry's thing, The Have and the Have-Nots, it's like that in the world. Those that have may get a better treatment. Those that don't may not get that treatment. So we can see that. We can even see it in the government. What do you mean? Well, look at this. In the government, there's two sets of rules. Back in the in the 80s, I believe it was, when President Bill Clinton was the president, he lied about an affair with Monica Lewinsky, and he was impeached. And one of the senators today, that I think is Leslie Graham, that said during that time that any president that lies should resign. But now we have a president that probably basically doesn't always tell the truth, but you don't hear that same statement from the same person, because now the person that is doing it is a part of their particular political party. And so since they are part of their political party, they don't feel the same way. They just sort of let that slide. Why? Because in actuality, there are two sets of rules. When you look at this Mueller report that just came out, I can assure you that over 4 years ago, if that Mueller report, if you would take the name of Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, off of the Mueller report and put Barack Obama on there, I can guarantee you with no shadow of a doubt that the Republicans would be impeaching him right now. Why? Because that they're not doing it or pushing for it, because this president is in their particular party. And so the rules change according to who's in charge and according to who's doing what. So I say to you that you have these things that are going on, and you can see sometimes where a thing is somewhat of a two sets of rules. And sometimes you can understand that these things are happening. And so when we start looking at it, I'm looking at some of your comments, and the court does a background check on offenders committing same crime. If your background check shows a repeat offender and the other is a first-time offender, then the penalty will be based on your background. And I agree with that. But in some cases, that's not always the case. They're not always checking. Some of them, it all depends on sometimes the judge and those that are in there. And these are documented facts when it comes to those things. But let me say to you that when we start looking at two sets of rules, I find it very interesting that we have not only two sets of rules that's outside of the system, but we also had to have rules. We have two sets of rules in church and in ministry. And it's amazing how we deal with the same offenses. Sometimes, even in church and even in ministry, we deal with things different ways. Sometimes in church and in ministry, we have to be honest. I've been in ministry 43 years. I've been saved a long time, and I've seen us deal with different things different ways. It all depends sometimes if those individuals were part of our group, or our circle, or whatever it was, and we just sort of dealt with, and we didn't deal with it. And so we dealt with the same offenses. Sometimes a person has done the same thing. And whether we understand something like this, we have to understand if someone kills somebody, kills three people 3 different times, they still killed somebody. And if someone kills somebody one time, it doesn't matter whether they did it kill 4 people. If they kill one person, the law states that they are a murderer. And it may not be, they may not get the same penalty of time, but they still committed the same offense. And some people, where they get off They get off of it because it all depends who's sitting on the bench, or it depends on what evidence was able to go in or go out. And so when we start dealing with ministry, a lot of times, and I know this is not a comfortable subject, because a lot of times we deal with the same offenses different ways in church. And sometimes we're harder on others. And the point I want to make is sometimes we're harder on ones that we don't know, or ones that we feel don't have a name or whatever. We're harder on them. And then those that commit the same offenses, we are not hard on them because maybe they've got a big church, maybe they've got a whatever. We're not as hard on them. We don't feel that we should deal with them the same way. And I believe if we're going to deal with it, let's be straight across the board, and let's not do some of these things and act like we don't have two sets of rules, because we do. We have two sets of rules in ministry. We have two sets of rules just like outside the church. We have them inside the church. And we've got to deal with everybody and deal with it the same way. I hear y'all. I see y'all chiming in. We've got to deal with it the same way. It's amazing. And I told you I'm not going to be long, and I know everyone may not agree. You don't have to agree with me. This is not about agreement. I'm just sharing and having the conversation, that we can have this conversation, because a lot of us have this conversation in private, but we don't want to have it in public, or we don't want to talk to each other about it. But it is a subject and a conversation that we have. I've had it with several of my preacher friends. They've had it with me. We've had it with one another, of how there are two sets of rules that move along in the church and even in ministry. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves, do we cover others but put others to rest? Sometimes we cover our friends. We cover ones that have done things, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm just saying that we cover, and we will not let things get in their way of what they're trying to do, where they're trying to go. But then again, the ones that we don't know, the ones that don't have a voice, the ones that's like going to court, the ones that can't afford the lawyer, that's got to get a court-appointed lawyer. Not saying the court-appointed lawyer can't do it, but they're limited in their resources and what they can do sometimes. And sometimes we come on, sometimes we do things, and we'll go after the ones that, and lay to rest the ones that can't speak for themselves. They don't have a platform like this. They can't talk for themselves. And we are brutal. We are vicious sometimes in our attack, in our words. But our friends and the ones we like, we don't do that to them. We have a private conversation. And I want to tell you something. It's one thing to correct someone privately, but they did the offense publicly. And sometimes they've got to own what they've done. And you can't act like they didn't do it. They did it, and they've got to own it. And sometimes we don't want to deal with that. We don't want to deal with it. So we cover those that we like. And not only do we cover them, we just give them instructions. We tell them just lay low for a minute, lay low for a while, and then we'll turn around and not only forgive them, restore them, but we will promote them and do all the other things. And then those that come on, let's be honest, those that sometimes follow the rules that y'all set, we don't promote them. We don't push them because they follow the rules. You shouldn't be penalized for following the rules. I said it. You should not be penalized for following the rules. And so sometimes we're covering people, but we're laying to rest. And I want to ask you, do you think that is the right thing to do, is to lay to rest those that can't defend themselves or we don't know, but we will push, cover, and promote those that are in our circles and that are our friends? Think about it. Do we have two sets of rules? I'll deal with that in a minute. I'll talk about that in just a moment, whether we will have two sets of rules. We've got to understand that when we talk about the rules and the things, we will case in point, and I haven't even addressed this, but case in point, we've got today. We've seen a couple of things that happen on social media recently, and one with the apostle Travis Jennings and what he did and what he said. And I never made a comment. Some things I've just learned as I get older. If I don't have a dog in the fight, just don't get into it. Some things, but I want to address it on this point, and I'm not addressing whether he's right or wrong. But my point that I want to make on this is that when I looked at it, there were those that went and said how wrong he was and how out of order he was. And he was out of order. And in one particular case, someone famous posted that he was definitely out of order and went after him and everything. But then I saw a few days ago where the same person praised Pastor E. Dewey Smith for what he said in the pulpit, and said that he was being transparent and what a great message it was. Now, I'm not here to say whether either one of them was wrong. My point is, if you're going to be hard on one for what they did publicly, then you should also be hard on the other for what they did publicly. I don't believe you can say, okay, well, that one was okay, that one right there just being transparent. If both of them were offensive to someone, then we've got to be honest and tell the truth. The reason some of us can't do it is because we are buying for those platforms. And what do you mean? We're buying. We don't want to say anything negative about these things that happen. And I'm not highlighting these two individuals, but we don't want to say anything negative about anything. Why? Because we want to sit on these platforms. We want to be able to be where if they call us, we will be where we haven't said anything offensive about them or whatever. And we've got to understand. I saw people, and I won't get into calling names because, I can, but it won't matter. I am a grown man. I can speak for myself. But I've seen leaders that when during the time of Bishop Long, that publicly criticized Bishop Long. But in other instances, people that did what is alleged that Bishop Long did or some close to it, they didn't rebuke them openly, or they didn't do what they needed to do openly with them. But that's the problem I think that we need to deal with. The two sets of rules. How can you do it with one of them and not do it with the other? The reason we don't do it is because either we call them our friends, they're running our circles, or they've got big churches, great followings, great names, or we call them our sons or our daughters. And the truth of the matter is it should be more easier for any of us to correct our sons and our daughters than anybody else. You don't go and correct. If my children and my grands, if in the store and they're doing something wrong in the store, you don't come up and whoop my children and give them a spanking in the store because you're going to jail. And they do that all the time. That's been proven. You can't correct somebody else's children in the store. But now I can correct them. I can tell them quit that, stop that, and do it because I'm the grandfather, or that's the father, or that's the mother. So you can do that. Many of us in ministry, the two sets of rules, we're not correcting sons. We're not correcting our daughters. We're not. But we're correcting everybody else publicly. We're jumping on. We're not correcting our friends. We don't call our friends and say, look, that's out of order, man. That right there, that's not cool. Where are the fathers that didn't care about the two sets of rules? They corrected you no matter who you were. Straightened you out right there on the spot and didn't care about whether your feelings were hurt, but they did it and made you better. And now we've got two sets of rules and nobody wants to deal with it. And I know I ain't going to get a lot of likes on this, and it really doesn't matter. I'm just saying this is a conversation that needed to be had. We need to have it with the two sets of rules where we are privately covering, folk, but we're laying to rest others. And I'm here to tell you that is a big problem. We have hurt more people because we haven't followed the biblical scripture in the Galatians where it says, brethren, if any man be overtaken in a fault, ye that are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. And he didn't say you were going to be tempted with the same thing. Who knows what could be something that comes along that disrupts or interrupts part of what you're doing. You just don't know. But I want to tell you that we've got to deal with the two sets of rules. Either we're going to be straight across the board with everybody, or we're going to leave people alone. Stop messing with folk. Stop whipping everybody else's children, and you haven't corrected your own children. Stop messing with everybody else's members, and you haven't corrected your own members. Stop messing with everybody else's preachers, and you haven't corrected your own preachers. Can't be two sets of rules. Can't do it. I mean, think about it. There's some things I look and say I said to one of my friends the other week and the other day, I said, man, if we would do half of the stuff that we see on social media that these people are doing, and I'm talking about it's not some allegedly, it's documented court proof. If we were doing half of that stuff, they would crucify us because they feel we don't matter and we're not important. But we see what's happening here. And where are the fathers that are saying enough is enough? Because someone brings money don't mean they shouldn't be corrected. Because someone has a big church, a small church, a storefront, if they having church in a hut, don't mean that they shouldn't stand to be corrected. Every one of us. I remember coming up being corrected many times. My uncle corrected me many times in church. He corrected me many times when we got back to the room. He corrected me, and it made me a better person. I'm built for correction. I know if I'm wrong, I can get corrected. I've been corrected by many. I was corrected by the late Bishop Patterson. I've been corrected by different ones. I don't have an issue with correction because I believe it makes us better. I thank God for correction because it means somebody somewhere is concerned about me. And I thank God for correction. And if you can't be corrected and don't want to be corrected, you've got issues. And you've got there's a problem there. It's a big problem. Very big problem. Because nobody wants to correct, and then no one wants to be corrected. And so the two sets of rules, what happens is when people don't want to be corrected, they just jump up and run to another church and go somewhere else and just operate there, and no one's corrected them. There's comes a time, no matter how big you are, you have to be under somebody that can correct you, whether they correct you publicly or privately. Somebody has to correct you, because you can't keep doing the same thing and no one corrects you nowhere across the board. I mean, come on, y'all. Let's talk about it. Share this with somebody. Let's be real about it. Let's understand that we might not want to have this conversation, but there are two sets of rules in the church. And Sister Perry, I didn't even want to get into that because they might think I'm saying a bad word or something. But the scripture says it does talk about that. If you can't take chastisement or correction, the Bible did say, you can look it up, then are ye bastards and not son. And that word, when you word the word bastard, means one that doesn't even know who his own daddy is. And so when you, that's what the Bible called you. I didn't say you were, that's what the scripture says. So when you don't operate and take corrections, the Bible said called you that. And so we've got to deal with the understand that now we've got, so what has happened is because we've got two sets of rules, we've got people that are coming up that feel if they can do it and no one says anything to them, then I can do it and no one can say anything to me. But we've got to understand the rules should apply to everybody. It should apply to Pastor Martin. It should apply to whoever it is, no matter what you got going on. If I got $1 million, it still should apply to me. Because understand, if you've got, I don't care how much money you got, if you break the law, in many cases, it just sometimes depends who you are. Maybe they'll come after you. Why? Because, and put you in prison no matter how popular you are. Why? Because you got to understand that the rules should apply. Now, I know in the world there are two sets of rules, but in the church, we should definitely not be dealing with two sets of rules in the church where we don't deal with things the way we should deal with them. It's a conversation that no one wants to have. It's a conversation that no one likes to have. It's uncomfortable. I know it's touchy. It gets under the skin, but it's got to be had. We must have the conversation because we are killing people that we could save because they're not in our circle or in our group. Are you listening at me? We got to have that conversation. I know we don't want to have it. We don't want to have it, but we got to have it, y'all. We got to talk about it. Two sets of rules. A lot of people have been crushed and hurt, and we get upset because people sometimes leave our churches or leave our denominations or leaving. We get upset, but people understand, you know, I think what we got to start realizing is stop taking for granted that the people we preach to, the people that serve and the people that serve us are ignorant. The worst thing, the thing that I hate more than anything, if I hate anything, I hate when somebody plays on my intelligence. I hate when you play on my intelligence as to think that I'm dumb, I'm ignorant and stupid and don't know what you're doing. I may smile in your face and smile with you, but don't ever think that I'm asleep. I know what you're doing. I've already peeped your card and I got you. And a lot of times we think people are crazy. People are not crazy. They know how they feel and the way they feel because we got these two sets of rules. We're going to push some and then we're not going to push others. Two sets of rules are being operated and we don't want to admit it. We don't want to say nothing about it, but there are two sets of rules. Let's stop saving and rescuing the people we like and are in our circle and laying to rest. When I mean by laying to rest, I mean killing them, killing their influence, killing what they do. Stop killing people because they're not in your circle. Two sets of rules. Let me say this before I get out of here. I'm not old, but I'm 58. And I've been doing ministry and preaching full-time since I was preaching since 16, but I've been full-time in ministry since I was 19. And since I was 18, should I say. And I have to tell you, you know, I've traveled around the world, and I'm not just talking about in Church of God in Christ. I was traveling full-time in ministry 7 years before I joined the Church of God in Christ. So I was already out there in ministry in many places. I can name many places that I went way before I became part of the Church of God in Christ, way before I became the president of evangelism. Oh, I was doing some of this stuff way back in the day. When I mean way back in the day, I was doing it. I go back as far as reel-to-reel tapes and cassette tapes. That's how far I go back, and 8 tracks. I was way back in those days. I was ministering when we were doing flyers by paste and copy. We didn't have computers and definitely didn't have live going on. We didn't have any of this. We didn't have social media. We only had radio. And if you had TV, you sure was on top. But now I'm saying to you that over the years, I've seen us and I've seen people in ministry and in church do the two sets of rules. And I've seen people survive. I've seen them restore people, seen them promote people, seen them lift them up, put them back on the pedestal where they were, and everyone was fine with it. Then I've seen people be totally destroyed and killed because no one stood up for them. No one thought that they had a chance. And sometimes they walked away from church, they walked away from God. And I want to tell you, I believe, this is my personal belief, I believe the blood's going to be on our hands by the way we've treated some people and done some people. And we've got to correct that. We've got to do a better job than what we're doing. And we've got to stop killing everybody. And just, if the rules are going to apply, let them apply straight across the board. Now, I know that somebody will get angry and mad and say something crazy. I'm not even going to pay attention to you. I promise you. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let you pull me into unnecessary craziness when the truth of the matter is, when I lie, you stop me. When I start lying on here, you stop me. But right now, I know I ain't lying. There's not a lie that came out of my mouth. We've got two sets of rules, and we need to work on correcting that. We need to work on putting that together. It's like in the world, I heard a story, and I'm through. A woman that came and told a lady, said, they just arrested a bunch of teenagers down on the corner. Police came by and picked them all up and put them what we used to call the paddy wagon. Put them in the paddy wagon. And one of the ladies' response was, good, they should have locked them all up. Just a bunch of hoodlums, just a bunch of thugs. Should have got them all. And they wait till she got through, and then one of the ladies says it, and they got your son too. And that quick she changed and said, tell you, ain't nothing but police brutality, just arresting our good young men. Well, it was fine as long as her son wasn't in the group. But when it was everyone else's son, they were thugs and all of that. That's how we do sometimes. Everyone else is bad. Everyone else is terrible. I'm here to tell you, if you're going to correct, I'm going to say it again, it's got to be repeated. Don't correct my children if you're not going to correct yours. Don't get on the live. Don't get on Twitter and social media and call yourself correcting me as a preacher or whoever, and you haven't corrected your own sons and daughters. You haven't corrected those that follow you, that look up to you just because they bring money to your platform and do stuff. You haven't corrected them? No. Nobody is above being corrected. Nobody. We can't talk about the president and what they're not doing to him if we won't turn around and do it to those that's right among us. Well, I pray and trust that you got some. I've got to minister tonight, but I had to get that out. And whether you agree or you don't agree, it's a conversation we need to have. Start paying attention to the two sets of rules. I hope that it's going to change. I don't think it will. I don't think that people are going to change as long as there's a thing with power and prestige and money and want people to follow them. I don't think that it's going to change. I don't think, hey, Pastor Flag, I don't think that it's going to change. I just don't. I don't think, and I'm talking about in all denominations and reformations, I don't think it's going to change. Because it's too much at stake. People want too much. For instance, I'll give you this, and I got to quit. But my son, he was watching earlier. I don't know if he's still here. But my son or my daughter, if they do something and post something that's not correct or whatever, I would call them and say, you need to take that down. And he said, Daddy, but I said, oh, I don't care. Take that down. Take it down now. And he's grown with kids, but because he respects his father, he'll take it down. And then I have a conversation, say, you don't need to say that no more. You don't need to do that. Why? And I said, do the same thing with my daughter. I've done things with some of the younger preachers and some people that I know. I've called them and talked to them and said, man, what's going on? And da-da-da-da-da. And we talk about it. Why? Because they respect a father that will say something to them. And my daughter is 37, so anybody past 37 and back going back the back way, I am old enough to be your daddy. And I'm old enough to be your spiritual daddy. But I'm saying to you that we have to. It is important for us to be able to say something and to say, take that down. Don't do that. There was a preacher friend of mine, and he's way older than me, a few years, and he had posted something one time, and I called him. I said, hey, man, I'm calling you. This is a friend calling. I said, you just posted something. I don't want you to hurt yourself. I don't want you to damage yourself. I don't want you to mess up what God is doing. And I read your post. And even though that may be the way you feel, you may need to take that down, because I decree and I believe and know that somebody is going to take that the wrong way. And if you leave it up there, they're going to take it the wrong way, and they're going to make something out of it that they shouldn't make out of it. And so take it down. And he said, I appreciate you for calling and saying something to me. And he took it down. That's what I believe we should do. And I believe that should be straight across the board. And so often when it comes to correction, just let's correct. Let's not kill people that we feel we can kill. Let's, get on talking about people and saying what they did. And that's not in our group. No, don't do that. Let's deal with everybody the same way. Oh, my God. I got to quit. I got to, I got to stop. I got to get out of here. But I see all of you. I appreciate you for being here with me today. And I want you to know that I want us to just, I know favor is not fair, but we ain't talking about favor. We talking about being fair to people and stop trying to kill their influence. Sometimes we're trying to do it because we want to get where they are. And you need to stop that. You need to quit that. You need to not do that. Don't have two sets of rules. Let's be the rules with everybody and deal with everybody the same way, whether it's privately or publicly. I'm not going to debate that part of it. But we do need to deal with everyone the same way and just cut the two sets of rules out. And so before I leave, those of you that are watching, just in the line, if you believe that we got two sets of rules, I didn't even add, that was the question of the day. Do we have two sets of rules? If we do, if you feel we do, say yes or no. Just type yes or no in there. If you don't feel we have them, hey, I ain't mad at you. That's what it is. But I do know that it's a conversation that we having in the back room. Let's not have it just in the back room. Let's have it today. Maybe some people are not aware of how we feel about the two set rules. Those of us that follow the rules, we don't want to be punished for following the rules. And then you reward everybody else that make a mess and do the craziest stuff. It just seems like the more crazy stuff you do, the more people highlight you, the more they promote you, the more they push you, the more you are. I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, I don't. I just don't get it. We are promoting people that do the craziest stuff. I said to someone the other day, I said, I guess if I do something crazy and something dumb, promotion, push, highlight. But because I try my best to follow the rules, and many other people do, try to follow the rules. We try to be saved. We may not be perfect, but we try our best to be saved and follow the scripture as close as we can. We're punished. We're punished for doing right. And everyone else seems to be rewarded for the more crazy stuff you do, the more you promote it, the more people like it and just think that it's being transparent or whatever. Whatever. Please. Well, I'm going to get out of here, y'all. I know I've probably made some people upset, some people angry. I know I'm going to make some people angry and probably get some texts and emails and some calls. You know, I don't know, and I just have to see. Let's see. Okay. All right. I'm getting ready to go. I'm trying to see. I'm looking at some of the comments. All right. Most people agree. There's one here. Okay, let's see. There's somebody here, Spencer, asking about, I don't know what that is. I can't read. Says, you're homosexual. You're on your way up. I don't know what that is. If you are homosexual, you're on your way up. Okay, I got you now. I couldn't see it at first. I see if you're a homosexual, you're on your way up. Well, I think I'm gonna let you. With that speaks for itself. We won't. I won't even deal with that because, again, I don't know, y'all. I'm. Hey, it's sort of crazy, and you see how people are thinking. Two sets of rules. It's amazing. It is just absolutely amazing to me that how we look at things, how we judge things, how we picture things, and how we let some stuff just, we slide it right on under the table and then do a reverse and put it right back on the top. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I know there are those that say, well, Pastor Martin, you shouldn't have brought this subject up. Well, everything I'm using right now to do it is my equipment. I'm not being offensive to anybody. Neither am I putting a shout out at anybody. I'm just having a conversation. And at the end of the day, if I never get on the platforms, and I'm not talking about the platform of a certain church or whatever, but if I never get on the platforms, my life, I am secure in what I've already done. I am secure from what I've done since I was 19 years old to 58. I've done stuff that most people are doing today, trying to do, or wish they could have done. So I've been there, done that. And so I'm not to the place that I'm going to die if I don't get there. No, I'm doing what God called me to do, enjoying ministry, enjoying family, enjoying my grandkids. Oh, my God. Enjoying them and having a great time. Thank God for the church that I pastor. It's not the biggest church in the world, but I guarantee you it's a healthy church. We're healthy. The people are healthy. And that's the thing that matters. And so I want to encourage those of you. I know sometimes you've been affected by the two sets of rules, but let me tell you one thing and I'm done. Keep pressing. Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't allow anybody to stop you. Don't get discouraged when they overlook you. Don't get discouraged when they don't do things and look like they're pushing and promoting people that and you look like, oh, really? Don't let it discourage you. Always remember that God called you, and wherever he wants you to be, you're going to get there. And when you get there, you're going to know that God placed you where he wanted you to be. So I want you to be encouraged. I want you to keep going, keep doing ministry. Keep saying to yourself that the Lord called me. His anointing, his hand is on me. and I'm going to do the work of the Lord. I pray and trust that you've been blessed. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm getting out of here. Pray for me tonight. I'm going to be ministering in the district meeting, and I want you to pray for me. Before I go, let me give a shout out today. Let me give a shout out today Let me give a shout out today. I want to remember my uncle, Reverend Gene Martin, on would have been his 80th birthday today. This is the man that trained me in evangelism. This is the one that trained me in the work of the Lord and doing ministry. Took me, raised me with my grandmother. My grandmother raised me from a little boy, and when I was 15, took me on the road with him into Miami and different places, me and a couple of my cousins, and the Lord called me to preach, and then he took me on the road with him in 1979, January, went on the road with him, was there with him 7 years, and even after I moved out on my own, I would still go back to revivals with him and to his camp meetings, and he trained me, and I had the privilege of burying him over 4 years ago, May 27th. He died May 20th, May 27th, 2015. I preached this eulogy, never thought I would do that, made sure that he was buried with a dignity and honor. And I'll never forget him and want to remember him on his, would have been his 80th birthday on today. And I am so grateful that the Lord put him in my life, and he was a great mentor and one that kept me straight. And I appreciate God for allowing him to be a part of my life. Well, the Lord bless you and the Lord keep you. Thank you so much for being with me. Next Wednesday, I'll be back here. We're going to be talking ministry again. I want you to do me a favor before we get out of here. Please share this with someone. Share it on your page. Please put it out. Let's let this go, because I believe that this is going to help somebody and going to encourage somebody. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you is my prayer. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for joining Pastor Martin. Visit us at www.dlmartin.org or email us at rrcdmartin@gmail.com.